starting 6 weeks ago when I was doing a meditation, reconditioning the body to a new mind, and was feeling actually bored with the meditation and was thinking of shifting to another, and I heard Dr. Joe's voice saying, connect into elevated emotion. And I connected in, and I literally started, my emotions went up, and literally went up an elevator in a tower, which I knew was here in Toronto. And I knew it because I was in the future. And then, yeah, in the tower, and I didn't know what this hotel looked like. I didn't know it was a tower, but anyway, I'm going up this elevator, had patterns on the walls, which since I've got here, I've seen that it's the same patterns. And then I was in a room and I was overlooking the lake, and I started thinking about my great-great-great-great-grandfather who settled in New York State. He was the first Irish immigrant to settle there. And as I was thinking about that, I felt this presence come into the meditation. And I was starting to sob, and I didn't know why. And I felt this presence come in, and they said, welcome home. This is where we started our journey here. And you're coming full circle back to us. And you're here to release us and to move on. And I'm like sobbing, going, you know, how could my ancestors, so I'm realizing this is probably my Irish ancestors. But I'm thinking to myself, how is that possible? Because Toronto is inland. I'm sure they must have, you know, landed somewhere else. So I'm just filled with emotion for a couple days. I research it, I don't find anything. And then I decide to Google Toronto and Irish immigration. And I discover that yes, there were thousands of Irish immigrants that came and landed here in Toronto in a wharf half a mile away, very close to where we ended our walking meditation, Reeves Wharf. And that they did land here, and there were the coffin ships. There were the ships that had a lot of typhus, and thousands of Irish immigrants died. Anyway, their presence there, they were sharing their loss, their grief, their suffering, and they were welcoming me home, saying, this is going to end. You're finally going to be released. And I am just like sobbing and sobbing, and as I'm sobbing, I'm realizing I can feel that I've been carrying this on my shoulders. I've been carrying the grief, I've been carrying all of that my whole life. And I could see it, I could recognize it. So that was 6 weeks ago. I did more research, you know, I discovered the wharf. I found out that Toronto, when these Irish immigrants landed, which were also, some of my ancestors were on those ships, that Toronto also went into trauma because there were so many people dying. The priests of Toronto, the nurses, all that were helping the immigrants were also very affected by this, and that the immigrants outnumbered the Toronto residents at the time. But I discovered that Ireland and Toronto did a memorial park, and it's right down here as well, half a mile away. And so when I came here, I came a day early so I could take flowers to the statues and to the park. And you know, I looked at the names that are etched in the stone, and offered prayers into the water, because I'm sure the water has a lot of meaning to those immigrants. And I felt at peace. I felt very at home. And I thought it was done. I thought like maybe that was it. That was the cycle. You know, it was done. That I was, and there's a PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. There's PTSD in this. That is actually what I'm trying to get to. That I feel like I've healed. That's connected into all this. So, so where am I? Oh yeah. So I go there. And I feel like it's done, but then I go back up into my room, and it turns out they gave me a room that looks over the ocean. It was a fluke. So I had the same view that I had 6 weeks prior to coming here. And I I look out and I still feel grief. I still can tell that it's not quite done. Then this will connect back, because what happens is I go into day 2 of the retreat here. And this again relates to elevated emotion and how it triggered, this multidimensional awareness. It's day 2. We're doing a second day. I think it's the second day of imaging an object, and then we go into the kaleidoscope, and then into the mind movie. We're doing all of that day 2 or 3. And so I'm imaging the eagle, and I'm seeing the eagle with a backdrop of infinity, like files and files of possibilities. And the eagle is emerging into the one that we are also in. And I'm connecting with the awareness of this eagle and the intelligence of the eagle. And I see the heart of the eagle. And I go, oh my God, we are so connected. We are so unbelievably connected with the organs. And I just realize that there's this, that we've all have a certain contract to come in to this particular reality, right? And this dimension. And that we all share an intelligence. And why this is relevant to it is because my heart is so open, and I am feeling the magnificence of being human and the magnificence of other creatures that breathe and whose hearts beat, right? And I'm just feeling the magnificence of being in this body. And I'm someone who my body has had challenges my whole life, and to feel the magnificence of my body was, number one, fabulous. To realize how sacred it is. To realize what a choice this is. And then, as I'm feeling this magnificence, we're suddenly going into looking at the kaleidoscope, right? And within a minute of being in that kaleidoscope, my world just cracks open. I see like a drop of water in the ocean. And in that drop of water is the story of my whole life. And in that, I see the trauma that I was repeating that goes back to my ancestors, this pattern of suffering and trauma that was taking place in my life. And I see, because I lost, when I was 14, my grandmother, my sister, and her daughter were killed in a plane crash along with 40 other people. And in that drop of water, the ripples, instead of the ripples being like they used to be, where the grief and the trauma and my connection to my sister and her daughter and all that, instead of it just repeating itself in the ripple, I was rippling out away from the trauma. And I was seeing that they had made their own choices to come into this life and to live that scenario for whatever reasons. So I felt very released from that relationship. Like it was no longer my relationship. My life was rippling out in this direction, and theirs was staying here and was done. As I was feeling all this, I went into a total awareness of God. What happened was I was looking at the kaleidoscope, but because I was sobbing, I had my eyes closed, and the pineal gland just opened up, and I was traveling. The pineal gland was just opening up, and I was traveling through space. I was seeing all these geometric patterns, one changing into the other, into the other, into the other, and these star formations, these geometric star formations, and these petal formations, and it just kept going and going, and I don't know how long this was happening. I was just sobbing for, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, just kept going. And I would open my eyes, look at the kaleidoscope, and I chose to close my eyes because that kaleidoscope was multidimensional, was just unbelievably unfathomable. And it also took me to this edge, which was so interesting, you know, with this theme of the edge, because it took me to the edge where I was in infinite reality, but it was taking me to the edge, showing me that there was much, 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 much more, right? And there were these fine filaments of light, you know, that, and at the edge, the light was turning into these like cathedral-like shapes, and then there was more shapes happening within the cathedral, and anyway. So it was just so profound, and while this is happening, it felt like 1,000 bees were in my heart, you know, and they were just buzzing and buzzing, and then it was moving to every cell of my body, and then I was wondering if I was going to survive this experience. And so I've been processing it the last couple days, but I feel like, you know, I really have healed the PTSD. I've been carrying it my whole life. It wasn't just the deaths, it was what happened in my family, and how I grew up with just a very broken family, and I felt released from all that. That wasn't my story anymore, and it's been my story over and over. I've lost my own children. I've been repeating what my aunt, there was a pattern of women losing their children, their firstborn. It goes back and back and back and back. And I lost my firstborn, and my secondborn, and my thirdborn, and I've been carrying this. And it's no longer my story.